Hey everyone. Today I'm going to talk about why some good coaches make bad managers. And I'm not going to. I'm going to try very hard not to disparage anybody and use anybody's names. And through my 30 plus years of soccer, um, I have met and known a lot of professional coaches, managers, a lot of high end youth, tons, of course, of college coaches, been around them. We've talked shop. We've been in courses together. And what I learned to my horror back in the day was that not everyone sees the same thing when they're looking at a tactical board, whether that's in 2D or 3D. Sometimes doesn't matter. And it's funny because I would say 95% of all managers can understand how you get from A to B and A to C without any trouble at all. But when you're trying to get to A to F, they have a hard time applying their tactics in a way that teaches their players how to get to that spot, wherever F may be on the field, whatever quadrant it's in or whatnot. And they sometimes fall into the trap and the hubris of thinking that the ways that worked for them the year before and the year before that and the year before that will also continue to work 3 years in the future. And they get stuck in this thing, and commentators do it too, pundits do it too, and it drives me nuts that they think a formation equals tactics. They think a style equals tactics, and it's way more than that. Okay, a formation is a starting point for your team to take the field. Okay, what you do from that defines your tactics, and sometimes even style of play. And it drives me nuts when I hear managers talk about, and some of them are deflecting. They're not going to tell a reporter everything they intend to do in the game at hand, but we're going to play our style. We're going to impose our style on the other team. And I find that nonsense. Of course, you would like to take the easiest route to get your victory, win 5-0, be up 3-0 in the first 20 minutes, fans are rocking, and you're already ready to order your halftime burrito. Okay? Life doesn't work that way most of the time, though. And your teams need to be trained in a certain way to adjust to other, wild card situations. And it's great. I like teams that put the ball on the carpet and knock it around, find purpose, have positive possession and chances. You cannot do that for 90 minutes. But if your team can only play on the carpet, they can't play on the slop, and they can't run and gun, you are not going to win many championships. Just like if you can't defend set pieces, chances are you are not going to win a championship. Okay? And I hate all the old cliches and proverbs that offense wins games, defense wins championships. That's bullshit because it's always a combination of two. If you can't score, you're not going to win. Okay, you might draw and get PKs, but that's not the way in real life. If your team scores 2 goals a game on average, statistically in soccer, you're going to win the majority of your games. As long as you're not giving up 3 goals a game. And if you're giving up 3 goals a game, you won't be a manager for much longer. But the problem I saw, and this is some of my friends too, that are very good trainers, very good coaches, they just don't see the tactical nuances that they should be seeing. And this is a difficult thing. And I don't know what the basis of this is. I don't think there's an IQ test you can take to determine this. I think it depends on your upbringing and what you've done. And I learned from some very high end coaches that also coached other sports. I've learned from other sports growing up. Okay, I think it was an advantage that I had that I was able to apply hockey tactics, basketball tactics to soccer because we have taken a simple game and overcomplicated it with a bunch of BS. And this really goes back to places like England and other things that had this rigid system and they think they know best. That's not true for anybody in any sport. What works this year may not work next year, and you constantly have to adapt. And I think a lot of top managers have forgotten that. My big example all the time is Arsene Wenger. It's like he forgot what made his team, when he had the Invincibles, what made that work, and he was still trying to do that 10 years later with a different type of player. Okay, he didn't have bite in those players. They were a bunch of tap dancers, and his tactics had not adjusted, and he couldn't figure out why he's not winning the league, but he was happy with fourth. That was a bunch of nonsense. He was a better manager than that, but he failed himself with his own ego, his own hubris, or whatever. And it's a thing that happens to all sorts of people when you're in charge and you're doing well. You forget how you got there. You forget all the changes you had to make and adjustments, and you get set in your ways, especially if you win multiple things multiple times. But eventually, whatever you're doing gets found out, copied, replicated, and done better. And that's just life. And what I see now, though, when I'm looking at, I'm going to pick on MLS and NWSL. I see some very good coaches and pretty good managers with that. What I see is a lack of imagination in some teams' tactics. And that could be down to, yes, I could have 11 rockheads on my team that don't understand crap, but I doubt that's the case. It's a lack of training on a daily basis that's more blackboard, okay? More intensive mental training, situational play, things that many managers cannot teach, but there's always people on staff that should be able to. But what I found is that's not the case either. And if you cannot teach situational awareness and situational play on small levels, you're certainly not going to break it all the way up to 11v11. And you have to start small, in small grids, and showing your team over and over. And that means playing in team scenarios, but you're stopping play a lot and doing a walkthrough back and say, these were your options here. What did you see, though? Okay? And if you cannot do that, you're not getting the best tactical advantage out of whatever system you're trying to run. But the game for 90 minutes is not about your system. It's about how well your teams can execute that system and the derivatives that should be there when the main way you want to play is not available. Okay? And I know I'm sort of jumping around here, and I may actually just cut this one and redo it, or I may leave it. But nope, I'm going to cut.